couple of years. So we didn't have, and another very important thing is only very few Germans own stocks. So we are not affected that much by the decline of the stock market. Less than 10% of the Germans own stocks. So the situation of the consumer here in Germany is different than it is in the US. And so also the recipes and the medication for the crisis must be a different one than in the US, which will be the right medication is very difficult to figure out at the moment. We think that one thing is very important is that we agree on the medication on an international level, that the leaders of the Western world, and specifically of the top industrial nations, don't go their own ways, but sit together and find an approach. That approach must be different from country to country, because the situation is different in the different countries. But the public expects a unified approach and a uniting message. I think the message in this crisis is very important, because such a financial crisis is a lot about psychology. It's about the mood of the people. If the people think the world is going under next year, they keep their money by themselves, which is logical, but which is the worst in the situation like that. So we have to give the people a real assessment of the crisis on one hand, but on the other hand, we also have to tell them that the world is not going down, not going under.
We're talking to Mathias Muller Von Blumencron. He is the editor-in-chief of the German magazine Der Spiegel, the largest circulation news magazine in Europe. I wanted to ask you about the German press. The U.S. press in the lead-up to the invasion was pretty uniform in support of the invasion. Now, there's some executives of the corporate media that might disagree with me, but the group FAIR did a study, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, in the 2 weeks around Colin Powell giving his push for war at the UN a few weeks before the invasion. And they looked at the 4 major nightly newscasts and found that there were 393 interviews done around war. Only 3 were with major anti-war leaders, 3 of almost 400. The media basically in the United States beat the drums for war. Now, I know you weren't editor of Der Spiegel at the time, but, well, I just heard the former Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder lamenting he felt that it was the German press that was pretty much uniformly against him because he took a stand against war. Do you think that's a fair characterization of the corporate media?
I think that's exaggerated. We have a very diverse press in Germany, which is very difficult to unify, luckily. So there is a wide range of opinion. On the other hand, I don't want to paint us as the heroes who always had the finger up and said this is a very tricky war. But specifically, our magazine did very intense reporting on the causes of the war and on, for example, on the connection between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda, which of course didn't exist, and so on. There were many other issues where you could see that the reasons for this war were very tricky and probably in large ways fabricated. Of course, that afterwards you're a lot smarter than in a situation like that, and specifically because nobody here in Germany liked Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was one of the worst dictators in the world. So it is always a little bit tricky in such a situation to choose your sides.
And let me ask you about Afghanistan. We just announced in the headlines that British troops say they're pulling out of Iraq. In Afghanistan, I was surprised that even Swedish troops are in Afghanistan. And Barack Obama has called for a surge in Afghanistan of more troops. Where does Germany stand there?
Afghanistan is a very central piece of world policy, and it is in a horrible situation. We see that the Taliban grab more and more of the land again, control more and more of the country again, and we have seen what Taliban regime means to civil rights, to specifically to women, to freedom of press, expression, all our core values. I think it is a crucial point and a crucial area for the Western countries. I think we can't give up. We can't give it up. We can't let it go to the Taliban. The Germans are now with over 3,000 people in Afghanistan. We would be happy if the German Chancellor would sell the engagement of the Germans in Afghanistan with a little bit more energy. We are not on a peaceful mission there. We are in areas where there is war. Germans die. German soldiers die. They get killed. It is a brutal fight. But I think Obama is right to define that as one of the core issues of his foreign policies in the next years. And the big problem is it's not only Afghanistan. We also face a very difficult situation in Pakistan, which is often considered, and with a certain reason, as the most dangerous country in the world, and has a very unstable government.
There are those who would say to save Afghanistan, the U.S. should pull out, or all the U.S. military forces, and support it in other ways through peaceful means.
Yeah, the Germans tried to do that, but what we see now is that there is a spiral of violence, and which naturally leads to more tensions. If the troops which come with a peaceful mission, which come with a mission to build bridges, schools, and so on and on, if those get attacked by suicide bombers, they get more careful, and they get more careful, and they get more careful, and then incidents happen that even innocent people get shot, and so on and so on. You see this kind of a spiral. I think pacifism and the respect for peace is a very important value in this world. But there are situations when we have to think if we can go with our idealism or if we have to choose a more pragmatic approach.
But even practically, the number of civilians that are dying in Afghanistan as the NATO and U.S. forces intensify the military campaign.
It's true, and of course we see a lot of mistakes being made. A lot of civilians lose their lives, which leads again to a hostile environment for the foreign troops. It is a very tricky and messy situation, and you need very clever people to handle that situation. We have now General Petraeus on your side there, and
working for the U.S. government.
Working for the U.S. government, exactly, and coordinating the events over there. We think that this person, of course, he's military, but has a very differentiated picture of the real situation. Is not a Rambo-like type, because with pure violence you can't win that war.
In other words, you can win it with what?
You need a mixture between diplomacy, help, and certainly military force. And those three goals, put those three goals or those three means together is probably one of the most difficult tasks in the world. But I think that just coming with peaceful ambitions, with peaceful means towards the Taliban and say, we just want to build up your country, please let us give you your money and let our workers help your people. I think that is a much too idealistic approach. On the other hand, what we should, of course, think about, is it the correct way to not talk at all with the Taliban? How to deal with the Taliban is a very tricky issue.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Mathias Muller von Blumencron is the editor-in-chief of the German magazine Der Spiegel, the largest circulation news magazine in Europe. And the international website, if you would say again, by the way, Der Spiegel, spelled D-E-R-S-P-I-E-G-E-L, is...
Thank you very much.
The website is...
Again, www.spiegel.de/international.
And we'll link to that at our website, democracynow.org. When we come back, we'll be joined by one of the leading radical lawyers in Germany, where we're broadcasting from in Hamburg. Stay with us.